My parents threw me out one day after my C-section. Your sister's coming with her newborn baby and she needs the room more than you, they said. When I confronted them, I can barely move, Mom. Let me at least rest so I can move, my mother shouted while grabbing me by the hair. You are moving fine. Now pack your bag and stop your pathetic whining and get out. My dad snorted, please get her out of here, it's making me uncomfortable. While me and my newborn walked outside, my sister looked at me and said, finally I can have the room all to myself without your drama. My husband pulled up and when he saw the state I was in, what he did next left all of them in complete ruins. My name is Wendy, and what I'm about to tell you happened 6 months ago. It still feels surreal, but I need to get this out because the ending. Well, let's just say karma has a way of making things right. I was 26 when this happened, married to my husband Mitchell for 3 years. We'd been trying for a baby for 2 years, and when I finally got pregnant, we were over the moon. My parents, Suzanne and Philip, seemed happy too, or at least I thought they were. My younger sister Cheryl, who's 23, had always been the golden child, but I figured having a grandchild would be special for everyone. The pregnancy was rough. I developed gestational diabetes and had to have a planned C-section at 38 weeks. Our daughter Paige was born healthy, but the surgery left me in significant pain and barely able to move. Mitchell had to go back to work immediately after the birth because he'd used up all his vacation time during my difficult pregnancy when I was on bed rest. Since I couldn't be alone with a newborn while recovering from major surgery, we arranged for me to stay at my parents' house for a week. They lived in a 4-bedroom house, and I'd be staying in my old room. My parents had enthusiastically agreed to this arrangement months earlier, saying they wanted to help their first grandchild. The first red flag should have been when I arrived home from the hospital. Instead of the warm welcome I expected, my mother Suzanne barely glanced at Paige and immediately started complaining about how the baby's crying might disturb her sleep. My father Philip just grunted from his recliner and went back to watching TV. But I was exhausted, in pain, and desperate for help, so I tried to brush off their cold behavior. I spent that first night struggling to breastfeed Paige while trying not to tear my surgical incisions. Every movement sent shooting pain through my abdomen, and I could barely get up to change her diaper. The next morning is when everything went to hell. I was in bed, trying to get Paige to latch for her morning feeding, when my mother burst into the room without knocking. She was already dressed and had that determined look on her face that I'd learned to fear as a child. Wendy, you need to pack your things. Cheryl's coming over with baby Jaden today, and she needs this room more than you do. I stared at her, thinking I'd misheard. What? Mom, I just had surgery yesterday. I can barely move. You're moving fine, she snapped. I've seen you walking around. Stop your pathetic whining and get out. I felt like I'd been slapped. Mom, I can barely move. Let me at least rest so I can move properly. That's when she did something I'll never forget. She grabbed a handful of my hair and yanked my head back, her face inches from mine. You're moving fine, now pack your bag and stop your pathetic whining and get out. The pain from her grip on my hair combined with the agony in my abdomen from the sudden movement made me cry out. Paige started wailing, sensing my distress. Suzanne, please get her out of here, my father called from downstairs. It's making me uncomfortable. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my father, the man who used to read me bedtime stories and taught me to ride a bike. Now he couldn't even look at me or his granddaughter. You heard your father, my mother said, releasing my hair. Cheryl will be here in an hour with Jaden. He's 6 weeks old, and she needs the quiet and space to recover properly. But Mom, I said, tears streaming down my face, I just had major surgery. Cheryl had a natural birth 6 weeks ago. I literally cannot. I don't want to hear it, she yelled. Cheryl has always been more responsible than you. She married Gregory right after college, got her degree, and now she's given us a beautiful grandson. You waited until you were 26 to get married, and now you're acting like you're dying from a simple procedure. The favoritism wasn't new, but this level of cruelty was. I'd always known Cheryl was the favorite, but I never imagined they'd throw me out with a newborn the day after surgery. With shaking hands and tears blurring my vision, I started packing Paige's things. Every movement was agony. Bending over to pick up her clothes sent sharp pains through my incision. I had to stop every few minutes to catch my breath. My mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me struggle without offering any help. This is ridiculous, I said, trying one more time. I'm your daughter too. I just need a few more days to heal. Cheryl is coming with Jaden, and that's final, she said coldly. She called last night saying she was struggling and needed help. Unlike you, she doesn't complain about every little thing. I wanted to point out that I hadn't complained about anything, that I'd been nothing but grateful for their supposed help, but I was too exhausted and in too much pain to argue. As I finished packing, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Cheryl had arrived. I managed to get Paige in her car seat and gather our bags. Walking down the stairs was excruciating. I had to grip the railing and take each step slowly, my incision pulling with every movement. Cheryl was in the living room, holding her son Jaden and chatting with our parents like nothing was wrong. She looked up as I struggled down the stairs with Paige and our bags. "Oh good, you're leaving," she said with a satisfied smile. "Finally I can have the room all to myself without your drama." I stopped in my tracks. "Drama? Cheryl, I just had surgery." She rolled her eyes. "Please. You're being so dramatic about a simple C-section. I had Jaden naturally, and I'm fine. You're just milking it for attention like you always do." I stood there, holding my crying newborn, bags falling off my shoulders, surgical incision burning with pain, and watched my entire family treat me like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. "I'm calling Mitchell," I said quietly. "Good," my father said without looking up from his newspaper. "Maybe he can talk some sense into you." I stepped outside into the cold morning air, Paige crying in my arms. I called Mitchell with shaking hands. "Hey honey," he answered cheerfully. "How's the first night going?" I broke down. Through sobs, I told him what had happened. There was a long silence on the other end. "They did what?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "They threw us out, Mitchell. Cheryl needs the room more than me, apparently. I'm coming to get you right now. Don't move." 20 minutes later, Mitchell's car pulled into the driveway. He got out and saw me sitting on the front steps, holding Paige and crying, surrounded by our hastily packed bags. The look on his face was something I'd never seen before. Pure rage. He walked up to me and gently took Paige from my arms. "Are you okay? How's your incision?" "It hurt so bad," I whispered. "I think I might have torn something when Mom grabbed my hair." Mitchell's jaw clenched. He helped me to the car, settled Paige in her car seat, and loaded our bags. Then he did something I didn't expect. He walked straight to the front door and knocked. My mother opened it, looking annoyed. "What do you want?" "I want to talk to you and Philip. Now." "We're busy with Cheryl and the baby." "Now," Mitchell repeated, his voice deadly calm. Something in his tone made her step aside. Mitchell walked into the living room where my parents and Cheryl were sitting. "So," he said, his voice eerily calm, "you threw out your daughter and granddaughter the day after major surgery?" "Now see here, Mitchell," my father started. "No, you see here, Philip." Mitchell's voice was getting louder. "Your daughter just had her abdomen cut open to bring your granddaughter into the world. She can barely walk, and you threw her out like garbage." "Cheryl needed the room more," my mother said defensively. "Cheryl," Mitchell turned to my sister, "had a natural birth 6 weeks ago. She's been home recovering this entire time. Wendy had surgery yesterday. It's not that big of a deal," Cheryl said, bouncing Jaden on her knee. "She's being dramatic." That's when Mitchell did something that surprised everyone, including me. He pulled out his phone and started recording. "I want you to say that again," he said to Cheryl. "I want you to tell me exactly why you think your sister, who had major surgery yesterday, is being dramatic." "Mitchell, put that phone away," my mother snapped. "No. I want this on record. I want everyone to see what kind of people you are." My father stood up. "You need to leave." "Oh, I'm leaving," Mitchell said. "But first, I want to make sure we're all clear on what happened here. Suzanne, you grabbed your daughter by the hair and forced her out of the house one day after she had a C-section. Philip, you couldn't even look at your own daughter or granddaughter. And Cheryl, you're gloating about getting a room while your sister is in agony." He turned the camera to himself. "This is what happened to my wife and newborn daughter today. Her own family threw them out the day after surgery because her sister wanted the room." "Turn that off," my mother yelled, reaching for the phone. Mitchell stepped back. "No. This is going to everyone. Your friends, your church, your neighbors, your coworkers. Everyone is going to know what kind of people you really are." "You can't do that," Cheryl said, looking panicked. "Watch me," Mitchell said. He was typing on his phone. "I'm posting this to Facebook right now. I'm tagging all of you, and I'm sending it to everyone I know." My mother went pale. "Mitchell, please, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," he said. "You chose your golden child over your daughter who just had surgery. You physically assaulted her when she asked for basic human decency. And now you're going to face the consequences." He finished typing and looked up at them. "It's done. I posted it to Facebook, Instagram, and I'm sending it to your church group, your book club, and every single person in your contacts." The room erupted in chaos. My mother started crying, my father started yelling, and Cheryl was frantically trying to grab Mitchell's phone. "You've ruined us," my mother wailed. "No," Mitchell said calmly. "You ruined yourselves. I just made sure everyone knows who you really are." He walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and one more thing. Wendy's inheritance from her grandmother? The $50,000 she was planning to use for Paige's college fund? She's withdrawing it all, Gregorioro. You'll never see a penny of it. My mother's face went white. She'd been counting on that money for their retirement. Grandma Violet had left it to me specifically, but it was in a trust that my parents had been managing. She can't do that, my father said weakly. She can and she will. I've already spoken to the lawyer. The money is Wendy's, and she's old enough to claim it. Mitchell smiled coldly. Goodbye. Don't ever contact us again. He left them standing there in shock and came back to the car where I was waiting. What did you do? I asked as he got in. I made sure everyone knows what they did to you, he said. And I made sure they'll face consequences for it. As we drove away, I could see my mother standing in the doorway, crying. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The next few hours were a blur. Mitchell took me to the hospital to check my incision, which thankfully wasn't torn, just severely strained. We then went to a hotel for the night because I couldn't face going home and dealing with the stairs. At the hotel, I finally had a moment to process everything that had happened. I sat in the bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My hair was disheveled from where my mother had grabbed it, my eyes were red and swollen from crying, and I looked like I'd been through hell. Because I had. Paige was sleeping peacefully in her portable crib, completely unaware of the chaos surrounding her birth. I watched her tiny chest rise and fall and felt a fierce protectiveness wash over me. No one would ever treat her the way my family had treated me. I would make sure of that. Mitchell was on his laptop, monitoring the responses to his video. Wendy, you need to see this, he said quietly. I walked over and looked at the screen. The video had been shared dozens of times just in the first few hours, and the comments were pouring in. But it wasn't just strangers commenting. People from our town, people who knew my family, were expressing their shock and disgust. Mrs. Henderson, my old high school teacher, had written, I taught Wendy in my English class. She was one of the kindest, most respectful students I ever had. This breaks my heart. No mother should treat her child this way, especially after surgery. Mitchell's coworker Mike had commented, Dude, I can't believe this is your wife's family. What kind of monsters do this to their own daughter? But the comment that hit me hardest was from my childhood friend Rachel. Wendy, I'm so sorry this happened to you. I remember how your parents always favored Cheryl, but I never thought they'd stoop this low. You deserve so much better. Reading these comments made me realize that other people had noticed the favoritism too. It wasn't just in my head. The patterns of emotional abuse and neglect that I'd normalized growing up were visible to everyone around us. Meanwhile, Mitchell's video was going viral. Not internet viral, but viral within our community. By evening, it had been shared hundreds of times. The comments were brutal. This is absolutely disgusting. Who throws out their daughter after surgery? I would never speak to my parents again if they did this to me. That poor girl. I can't believe her own family would do this. This is child abuse. She just had a baby. Mitchell showed me his phone. Look at this, Wendy. Your mother's friend Janet from the book club commented. I read Janet's comment, Suzanne, I am absolutely appalled by your behavior. How could you do this to your own daughter? I don't even know who you are anymore. Don't bother coming to book club next week. You're no longer welcome. Similar comments were appearing from other people who knew my parents. My father's golf buddy Steve had written, Philip, this is disgusting. I thought I knew you, but apparently I was wrong. Don't expect to see me at the club anymore. The speed at which their social circle was turning against them was shocking. Within hours, decades of friendships were being destroyed by a single video that simply showed the truth of who they really were. Mitchell's phone kept buzzing with notifications. More shares, more comments, more people expressing their outrage. He showed me a screenshot of my mother's Facebook page. She'd posted a status update, please stop sharing that video. You don't know the whole story. The responses to her post were brutal. Person after person was calling her out, expressing their disgust, and demanding to know what possible justification there could be for throwing out a daughter after surgery. My Aunt Faye, my mother's own sister, had commented, Suzanne, I watched that video 3 times trying to understand how you could do this to Wendy. There is no whole story that justifies this behavior. I'm ashamed to call you my sister. That comment particularly stung because Faye had always been close to my mother. If she was turning against her, it meant the damage was even worse than I'd realized. Mitchell showed me another comment thread where people were discussing my parents' history of favoritism. Apparently, it had been obvious to everyone in town for years. I remember at Wendy's high school graduation, her parents barely clapped for her but gave Cheryl a standing ovation when she won some minor award at the middle school ceremony the same week, wrote Mrs. Robbins, a family friend. When Wendy got married, Suzanne spent the whole reception talking about Cheryl's upcoming engagement instead of celebrating her older daughter, added someone else. The pattern was clear to everyone who had been paying attention. My parents had been emotionally abusing me for years, and the video had finally exposed it to the world. But the real bombshell came around midnight. Mitchell's phone rang, and it was Gregory, Cheryl's husband. "Mitchell, I need to talk to you," Gregory said. "Can you meet me somewhere? I can't do this over the phone." We arranged to meet at a 24-hour diner across town. Gregory looked terrible when he arrived, like he hadn't slept in days. He ordered coffee and sat across from us at the booth. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Cheryl didn't just decide to come over yesterday. She planned this." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "She's been jealous of you throughout your entire pregnancy," Gregory explained. "She kept saying how you were getting all the attention, how your parents were more excited about Paige than they were about Jaden. When he was born 6 weeks ago. She was furious about it." He took a sip of coffee and continued. "When you went into labor, she called your parents and told them she was struggling with postpartum depression and needed their help. She specifically asked them to give her your room." I felt like I'd been punched in the Gregory ache. "She planned this? She planned to kick me out after surgery?" Gregory nodded miserably. "She said it would teach you a lesson about not being the center of attention. She thought it would be funny to see you have to leave." Mitchell's face was turning red with anger. "She thought it would be funny to force a woman who just had surgery out of her parents' house?" "I'm so sorry," Gregory said. "I had no idea how bad it was until I saw that video. When I got home and confronted her about it, she laughed. She actually laughed and said you deserved it for being dramatic." This revelation changed everything. It wasn't just favoritism or poor judgment. It was calculated cruelty. My sister had deliberately orchestrated my humiliation and pain. "There's more," Gregory said quietly. "She's been having an affair with her boss at the marketing firm. It started about a year ago, before Jaden was born. I found out tonight." The hits just kept coming. My sister wasn't just cruel, she was a cheater and a liar. "I'm filing for divorce," Gregory continued. "And I'm going to make sure I get full custody of Jaden. I don't want him growing up thinking this kind of behavior is normal." We talked for another hour, with Gregory sharing more details about Cheryl's behavior and my parents' involvement in the plan. Apparently, they'd all discussed it beforehand and agreed that I was too needy and needed to learn independence. The next morning, armed with this new information, Mitchell made another video. This one was more detailed, explaining the premeditated nature of what had happened. He included screenshots of text messages that Gregory had provided, showing Cheryl bragging to her friends about her plan to kick me out. This second video was even more damaging than the first. The revelation that it had been planned made my family look even worse. People were calling them psychopaths, sociopaths, and worse. My parents' friends started calling them. My mother's book club expelled her. My father's golf buddies stopped talking to him. But it would be months before their church took any official action. Pastor Murphy called my parents the next morning. Apparently, several congregation members had seen the video and were appalled. He wanted to meet with them about their unchristian behavior. My mother called me crying. "Wendy, please, you have to get Mitchell to take down that video. We're being destroyed." "Good," I said. "You destroyed me first." "Were your parents?" "No, parents don't throw their children out after surgery. Parents don't grab their daughter's hair and force them out of the house. You're strangers to me now." She was sobbing. "Please, honey, we made a mistake. We're sorry." "Are you sorry, or are you sorry you got caught?" There was a long silence. "We're sorry we got caught," she whispered. At least she was honest. The real reckoning came 3 days later. I went to the lawyer's office to claim my inheritance. Mr. Novak, the family lawyer, was disgusted when he heard what happened. "Your grandmother would be rolling in her grave," he said. "She specifically left this money to you because she knew you'd need it someday. She never trusted your parents with money." I signed the papers and had the $50,000 transferred to an account that my parents couldn't access. It was money I'd planned to use for Paige's future, but now I knew I'd needed to protect her from my toxic family. But the financial hit wasn't the worst part for my parents. The social exile was destroying them. My mother had to quit her job at the elementary school because parents were complaining about her being around children. The school board had received dozens of calls after the video went viral, with parents expressing concern about having someone who would treat their own daughters so cruelly working with their children. "How can we trust her with our kids if she can't even be kind to her own daughter?" One parent had written to the superintendent. The principal, Dr. Lawson, had called my mother into his office 3 days after the video was posted. Several parents had provided him with printed copies of the video and the comment threads, demanding action. Suzanne, I'm going to be direct with you, Dr. Lawson had said. The school board has decided that it's best if you resign. The community has lost faith in your character, and we can't have that kind of negativity affecting our school environment. My mother had tried to defend herself, claiming the video was taken out of context, but Dr. Lawson wasn't buying it. I've watched the video multiple times, Suzanne. I've read the comments from people who know your family. This isn't an isolated incident. This is a pattern of behavior, and the community has spoken. When my mother refused to resign, they fired her. After 15 years of working at the school, she was terminated for conduct unbecoming of an educator. The local newspaper even picked up the story. The headline read, "Local elementary school teacher fired after video shows her abusing daughter post-surgery." The article included quotes from parents and community members expressing their outrage. My father lost 2 major clients for his accounting business because they didn't want to work with someone who would treat their own daughter that way. But the real blow came when his biggest client, Shelton Manufacturing, terminated their contract. Mr. Shelton had been my father's client for over a decade, representing nearly 40% of his business income. When the video surfaced, Mr. Shelton's daughter-in-law had seen it and was horrified. My father-in-law called me personally, Mitchell told me after speaking with someone who worked at Shelton Manufacturing. He said he couldn't continue working with someone who would treat his own child that way. He said it showed a fundamental lack of character and compassion. The Shelton Manufacturing contract had been worth $80,000 annually to my father's small accounting firm. Losing it meant he'd have to lay off his only employee and potentially lose his office space. But the consequences kept mounting. My parents' mortgage company somehow got wind of the situation when a video clip was shared in a local Facebook group that included several of their employees. The company's HR department decided that my father's public behavior reflected poorly on their corporate image and terminated their business relationship. My parents had been with the same mortgage company for 20 years, and suddenly they were scrambling to find new financing. In the midst of all the social and professional fallout, they were facing potential foreclosure. The stress was taking a physical toll on both of them. My mother developed stress-related eczema that covered her arms and face. My father started having panic attacks and had to be hospitalized twice for what he thought were heart attacks but turned out to be anxiety. Their marriage, already strained by years of dysfunction, began cracking under the pressure. My mother blamed my father for not standing up for me, saying his lack of action had made her look even worse in the video. "You just sat there like a coward," she screamed at him during one of their fights that the neighbors reported hearing. "You didn't even try to stop me. Now everyone thinks we're both monsters." My father, meanwhile, blamed my mother for being too harsh and creating the entire situation. "You're the one who grabbed her hair," he yelled back. "You're the one who threw out our daughter. I was just trying to stay out of it." Neither of them seemed to grasp that they were both equally culpable. Neither of them had shown me any kindness or support when I needed it most. The final straw for their marriage came when my mother's sister Faye called and uninvited them from her daughter's wedding. The wedding was supposed to be in 2 months, and my parents had been looking forward to it for over a year. "I can't have you there, Suzanne," Faye had said. "My daughter doesn't want the drama, and frankly, I'm embarrassed to be related to you right now. What you did to Wendy was unforgivable." This devastated my mother because Faye's daughter Paige, yes, she was named after me, had always been close to her. The idea that she was being excluded from major family events made her realize how completely she destroyed her reputation. Cheryl was having her own problems. Her friends had seen the video and were horrified. Several people had commented about how she'd acted, calling her cruel and heartless. Her husband Gregory was mortified and made her write a public apology, which she posted on Facebook. But Cheryl's troubles were just beginning. Her boss at the marketing firm, the same man she'd been having an affair with, decided to end their relationship after seeing the video. He was married with children and couldn't risk being associated with someone who had such a negative public image. "I can't be seen with you anymore," he told her. My wife saw that video, and she's furious. She knows we've been working late together, and now she's suspicious. "I can't afford to have my marriage scrutinized because of your family drama." Cheryl was devastated. She'd been planning to leave Gregory for this man, thinking he'd divorce his wife and they'd start a new life together. Instead, he'd cut her off completely and was avoiding her at work. The affair revelation came out during Gregory's divorce proceedings. His lawyer had hired a private investigator who easily uncovered the relationship. Cheryl's cruel behavior in the video, combined with her infidelity, made it easy for Gregory to get everything he wanted in the divorce. The judge who handled their case had actually seen the video because his wife had shared it on Facebook. During the custody hearing, he referenced Cheryl's behavior toward me as evidence of her poor character and judgment. "Mrs. Robbins," the judge had said, "I've reviewed the evidence of your extramarital affair, but I'm equally concerned about the video that shows your treatment of your sister after she'd undergone surgery. This demonstrates a pattern of callous and cruel behavior that raises serious questions about your fitness as a parent. Cheryl lost primary custody of Jaden and was ordered to pay child support. She was also required to attend parenting classes and anger management counseling. The judge's ruling was scathing, referencing her calculated cruelty and lack of empathy. Gregory kept his word. He got custody of Jaden and brings him to visit Paige regularly. The kids are growing up as friends, which is what I always wanted. 6 months later, here's where everyone ended up. My mother Suzanne is living with her sister in Arizona, working as a cashier at a grocery store. She lost all her friends and had to start over at 58. She sends cards to Paige that I throw away unopened. My father Philip is living in a one-bedroom apartment across town. His accounting business failed, and he's working for someone else now. He's developed a drinking problem and looks terrible every time I see him around town. Cheryl is living in a trailer park with her new boyfriend, some guy she met at a bar. She lost custody of Jaden and only gets visitation every other weekend. She works at a fast food restaurant and looks miserable every time I see her. Gregory remarried a wonderful woman named Kelly who treats Jaden like her own son. They're happy, and Jaden is thriving. Mitchell and I are stronger than ever. What he did that day showed me what real love looks like. He didn't just comfort me, he fought for me. He made sure my family faced consequences for their actions. Paige is now 6 months old and the light of our lives. She'll never know her grandparents or aunt, but she's surrounded by love from Mitchell's family and our chosen family of friends. The video is still up on social media. Mitchell refuses to take it down, and honestly, I don't want him to. It serves as a reminder of what happened and a warning to others about who my family really is. People often ask me if I feel bad about what happened to my parents and Cheryl. The truth is, I don't. They made their choices, and they have to live with the consequences. They could have been kind, supportive, and loving. Instead, they chose cruelty. The best part is that Paige will grow up knowing she's loved and protected. She'll never experience the favoritism and conditional love that I grew up with. She'll never wonder if she's good enough or if her parents really love her. Mitchell and I are planning to move to another state next year. We want a fresh start, away from all the drama and toxic people. We're going to use part of my inheritance for a down payment on a house where Paige can grow up happy and secure. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if my parents had just been kind to me that day. If they had helped me recover and welcomed their granddaughter with love. We could have had a relationship. Paige could have had grandparents who loved her. But that's not what they chose. They chose Cheryl over me, like they always had. They chose cruelty over kindness. And now they're living with the consequences of those choices. The last time I saw my mother, she was at the grocery store where she works. She looked older, sadder, and completely broken. She saw me with Paige and started crying. "Please," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. "I know you are. But sorry doesn't undo what you did. Sorry doesn't give me back the first week of my daughter's life. Sorry doesn't heal the trauma you caused." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know. I miss you. I miss Paige." "Then you should have thought of that before you threw us out," I said. "You made your choice. Now live with it." I walked away and never looked back. The truth is, I'm happier now than I've ever been. I'm free from toxic people who never really loved me. I have a husband who would do anything for me and a daughter who will grow up knowing she's cherished. But the road to this happiness wasn't easy. For weeks after the incident, I struggled with guilt and second-guessing myself. Despite everything they'd done to me, they were still my family, and seeing them suffer was difficult. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Harding, who specialized in family trauma. She helped me understand that what I was experiencing was normal for abuse survivors. "You've been conditioned to put their needs above your own," she explained during one of our sessions. "You've been taught that you're responsible for their emotions and reactions. But Wendy, you are not responsible for the consequences of their actions." Through therapy, I began to understand the full scope of the emotional abuse I'd endured growing up. The favoritism wasn't just preference, it was a deliberate pattern of making me feel less worthy than Cheryl. The constant criticism, the dismissal of my achievements, the way they'd gaslight me when I pointed out their unfair treatment, it was all part of a system designed to keep me compliant and desperate for their approval. Children who grow up with conditional love often become adults who tolerate unacceptable behavior, Dr. Harding told me. They'll endure abuse because they're still hoping to finally earn the love they never received. The therapy helped me realize that cutting contact with my family wasn't cruel, it was necessary for my mental health and for protecting Paige from the same toxic patterns. Meanwhile, the fallout from the video continued to ripple through our community. 6 months after the incident, my parents' church finally took official action. Pastor Murphy had initially tried to mediate, hoping to facilitate reconciliation and forgiveness. But when the congregation learned about the premeditated nature of Cheryl's plan, and when more stories emerged about my parents' treatment of me over the years, the church leadership decided they needed to act. "We believe in forgiveness," Pastor Murphy told my parents during a meeting that Gregory later told me about. "But we also believe in accountability. Your actions have caused scandal in our community and have damaged the witness of our church." My parents were asked to step down from all leadership positions. My mother had been the treasurer of the women's ministry, and my father had been a deacon. Both positions were quietly reassigned to other members. The church didn't publicly announce their decision, but in a small town, word travels fast. Soon everyone knew that my parents had been essentially demoted within their own congregation. The social isolation was becoming unbearable for them. My mother, who had always been deeply involved in community activities, found herself excluded from everything. The Women's Auxiliary wouldn't let her help with the annual charity drive. The Garden Club uninvited her from their monthly meetings. Even the grocery store checkout clerks treated her coldly. My father fared no better. His weekly poker game disbanded because the other players were uncomfortable around him. His membership at the country club was quietly revoked after other members complained. He'd lost not just his business clients, but his entire social network. The final blow came when my maternal grandmother Violet, who lived in a nursing home 2 hours away, saw the video. Someone had shown it to her on their phone, and she was horrified. Grandma Violet had always been the family matriarch, and her opinion carried enormous weight. When she called my mother and told her she was disgusted and ashamed of her behavior, my mother completely broke down. "I raised you better than this, Suzanne," Grandma Violet had said. "I thought I taught you to be kind and compassionate. What you did to Wendy is unforgivable. That poor girl had just had surgery, and you threw her out like garbage." Grandma Violet, who was 89 years old, made the difficult decision to change her will. She'd been planning to leave her house to my mother, but after seeing the video, she contacted her lawyer and changed the beneficiary to me. "Wendy has shown more strength and grace in this situation than the rest of you combined," she told the lawyer. "She deserves to inherit the house, not the daughter who treated her so cruelly." When my mother found out about the will change, she was devastated. The house was worth over $200,000, and she'd been counting on that inheritance for her retirement. 6 months later, here's where everyone ended up. My mother Suzanne is living with her sister in Arizona, working as a cashier at a grocery store. She lost all her friends and had to start over at 58. She sends cards to Paige that I throw away unopened. But living with her sister hasn't been the refuge she'd hoped for. Aunt Faye, while she'd offered her a place to stay, made it clear that she disapproved of my mother's actions. The two sisters, who had once been close, now barely speak to each other. "I can't look at you the same way," Faye had told her. "Every time I see you, I think about what you did to Wendy. How could you be so cruel to your own child?" My mother's new job at the grocery store pays minimum wage, a far cry from her teacher's salary. Her co-workers are mostly teenagers and young adults who don't know about her past, but she lives in constant fear that someone will recognize her from the video. The stress has taken a severe toll on her health. She's developed high blood pressure and chronic insomnia. She's aged dramatically, looking more like 70 than 58. My father Philip is living in a one-bedroom apartment across town. His accounting business failed, and he's working for someone else now. He's developed a drinking problem and looks terrible every time I see him around town. The apartment he's renting is in a run-down complex on the wrong side of town. It's a far cry from the 4-bedroom house he'd owned for 20 years. The walls are thin, and he can hear his neighbors fighting at all hours. He's complained to the landlord multiple times, but nothing gets done. His new job is working as a bookkeeper for a small auto parts store. The pay is less than half what he used to make, and he has no benefits. At 62, he's too old to easily find better employment, especially with his damaged reputation. The drinking started as a way to numb the pain of losing everything, but it's become a serious problem. He's been arrested twice for drunk driving, and his license has been suspended. He now has to take the bus to work, which is humiliating for someone who used to drive a luxury car. Cheryl is living in a trailer park with her new boyfriend, some guy she met at a bar. She lost custody of Jaden and only gets visitation every other weekend. She works at a fast food restaurant and looks miserable every time I see her. The trailer park is a rough place, with drug dealers and domestic violence calls being common. Cheryl's new boyfriend, Brent, is unemployed and has a criminal record. He's abusive, both emotionally and physically, but Cheryl feels she has no better options. Her job at the fast food restaurant is the only work she could find after being fired from the marketing firm. Her boss there had seen the video and decided that her behavior made her unsuitable for a client-facing position. "We can't have someone with your reputation representing our company," he told her. "What you did to your sister shows a complete lack of professionalism and basic human decency." Cheryl's visitation with Jaden is supervised because of concerns about her living situation and her emotional instability. She's required to meet with him at a family visitation center, where social workers monitor their interactions. The supervised visits are heartbreaking for her. Jaden, who's now 7 months old, barely knows her. He cries when she tries to hold him and reaches for Gregory when he arrives to pick him up. The social workers have noted in their reports that Cheryl seems more concerned with her own emotional needs than with what's best for her son. Gregory remarried a wonderful woman named Kelly who treats Jaden like her own son. They're happy, and Jaden is thriving. Kelly is a pediatric nurse who has experience with children from difficult backgrounds. She's been patient and loving with Jaden, helping him adjust to his new life. She's also been supportive of Gregory's decision to maintain contact with me, understanding that Jaden needs to know his aunt and cousin. The four of us, Gregory, Kelly, Jaden, and Paige, often have family dinners together. It's the kind of loving, supportive family environment that I never had growing up, and it makes me incredibly grateful for the family I've chosen. Mitchell and I are stronger than ever. What he did that day showed me what real love looks like. He didn't just comfort me, he fought for me. He made sure my family faced consequences for their actions.